Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. It's Mr. Music and Watch coming at you live with a new video. Today, I will be ranking every single case in the Ace Attorney series. This includes the 6 mainline games, the 2 investigations games, the 2 great Ace Attorney spin-offs, and Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. I've played or watched each case at least twice, so my opinion is rather solid. There won't be any spoilers involving the culprits or the solutions to the cases. However, I will be talking about some key character development points. I'll try to be as light as I possibly can, but if you are worried about spoilers, I don't mind if you just skip ahead to the end of the video to see my rankings. All right, we have so many cases to get through, so let's go ahead and get started. Case 1-1, the introduction to Phoenix's uh, first time being a lawyer. So let's talk about the cast first. So we have Phoenix Wright, who's a greenhorn attorney. You can never really tell if he's extremely lucky or extremely unlucky. Uh, I love his objection pose. I mean, it's famous for a reason. There's a reason that the pointing finger became iconic. Uh, he has a mentor named Mia Fey, who has some really funny reactions if you purposely pick the wrong answers at the beginning of the case. We have the defendant, Larry, who is just okay. I won't always be talking about who the defendant is, but in this case, I think it's important to point out that it's Larry for later on. So, Larry is just okay. He's just like a complete average person. And considering how out there the series gets from this point onward, I think it's okay to have a normal person just stick around. Uh, we have the prosecutor, Winston Payne, who he's pretty awesome. I love the fact that they always bring in a prosecutor in the very first case to just like kick them, kick them when they're down because I don't know, they're just pathetic, and the responses they give are funny and desperate, but mostly funny. And then we have the judge, who I won't be talking about too often, but I'll say that in this case, he's probably the most intimidating that he will be for quite a while. There's only like a handful of moments where I say that the judge is an imposing man, but I could really feel it in this time. Like he was not having any any of it. He wanted you to really show what you can do. So, I think this is a great case. However, it is completely surpassed by almost every case that follows it. So, even though this is a nice short 30-minute case that teaches you how to do everything and it feels good to say objection, I think I'm going to put this in the okay, I guess. One last thing I want to point out is that Matthew Matosas did an excellent analysis of the very first time you say objection in this game. So there's a cross examination between Phoenix and a witness, and Phoenix presents a piece of evidence which says objection, and then the music just stops. Like there's no more cross examination music, it's just silence. And then Phoenix asks a couple questions and points out a few things. And as soon as the witness slips up, the Phoenix points it out, and then the objection music plays. Just fantastic direction between the script writer and the music director. Just excellent how it was done, and that mm, kind of finesse just carries on throughout the entire series. Like, just a great introduction. All right, going on to case 1-2. This continues immediately after the first case, and uh, well, Phoenix is really in over his head. Like, there's a couple times I will say that, but I think that this was probably the closest where Phoenix came to like being in serious danger, where he would actually face serious repercussions for what he has to do. I like how serious everything is. I like the introduction of Miles Edgeworth. I mean, you hear about the man for quite a while before you actually get to see him, and he does not disappoint. I will say that. I like the detective character Gumshoe, who will show up in several cases. He's he's really serious, although even by the end of the case, you can see that he has a warm, friendly side to him. As long as you get along. As far as the mystery goes, I like how devious the villain is. Like he is a complete scumbag, that's for sure. Uh, the witness is also really good. What else? Mm, I guess I like how morally dubious this case is, because Phoenix is basically doing anything he can to survive, and he knows that he's in the right overall, but the methods he has to use to get there aren't aren't like crystal clear. So I really like the writing for this case. I also like how it concludes. I won't be talking about that. And then I would be remiss to talk about the introduction of Maya Fey, one of the greatest characters in the entire series. Uh, I, I don't know. I mean, there's always something about a character who's like smiling at you and seems really friendly, but then you could just tell that they have something like holding them back, like that they have a dark past, or there's just something that needs to be explained. And it takes quite a while for it to be explained. It's not going to happen in this case. So I really like this case. I think this is great. Like this is a great case. All right, trial 3. This one involves the Steel Samurai and a television studio. You know, the first time I played this, I thought this was pretty good. Like it was basically a slice of life where all the characters could just like relax and like let loose and start to like form bonds. Like Phoenix and Maya don't really have like a close relationship until like they start bonding over things in this case. Um, the development with Edgeworth is pretty funny, and I also like how you can see that there's more to this character other than just being an intimidating individual. What else do I want to say? I like Old Bag. That opinion is not going to continue for the rest of the series, but I really like Old Bag in this case, especially. Um, but so one thing that's unique to the first game is that some of the trials can go on for multiple days, and the way the parts of a story or the stories work out is that there's usually an investigation and then there's a trial, an investigation and then a trial. So in this one, there are basically 6 parts to the story, and I think that this story was just dragged on way too long. Like the first day, you only have like a couple of pieces of evidence, and then you basically present the evidence, and then the trial's over, and you're going back to the investigation. It's like, what was the point of that? They really should have just combined the first 2 days. The pacing was just way too slow. So I think I'm gonna have to give this a disappointing, because while I do like the trends it set for the later games, especially the excellent Steel Samurai song and the lighter side of Edgeworth, Phoenix, and Maya, it's not really fun to play, I guess. All right, case 1-4. So they made a live action movie that's only in Japanese, as far as I know. I don't think it's been dubbed into English. And the way the first or way the movie handled things was they had the 4 cases, which I'm about to talk about the fourth one right now, but they they dedicated like the first 20 minutes to the first case, and then did a little bit of time on the second case because it is an important character development moment, and then just completely montaged over the third case. Like you could tell they didn't like the third case, but majority of the movie, like over an hour, is spent on this last case. And I'm not gonna mince words. Like this is one of the greatest cases ever. Uh, the fact that they're still referencing this case all the way up into Game 6 is just incredible. Game 6 is the last game, like sequentially, so they knew that they had a masterpiece on their hands. I love the prosecutor Von Karma. He everything about that man is just great. I love how intimidating he is. I love his objection. I love the way he snaps his fingers. Just everything about the guy is great. Um, one one of the downsides I will say is that I don't really like the investigation portion, like going down by the lake. However, I feel like the mystery is so hard to parse. Like it is really, I don't know. It is so much harder than the previous 3 cases that you're really not sure what's going on. So although the investigation itself is slow, um, I do like how you're encouraged to figure out the mystery and go through it all. So I don't have anything to complain other than that. There's also the excellent cross examination involving a parrot. I'm not going to go any further than that, but the parrot scene could be a tier of its own above this one. Just add the parrot tier to the top. Why not? All right. All right. Case 1-5. So the first three Ace Attorney games were released in Japan on Game Boy Advance, and when the first game was released, it only had these four cases. However, they ended up all getting remastered into the DS versions, which is what North America received. And when they did that, they added this fifth case. So playing this fifth case, you can already feel that there's some sort of like difference. I mean, obviously the graphics are much higher. They're basically they're Apollo Justice standards, the fourth game, and the music is also much higher quality. What would I let's think of two good things and two bad things I want to say. So the two good things, the villain is great. I'm not even gonna go any further than that. I'll just say the villain is great. Like the villain pretty much carries this case. And then I really like Emma Sky's character. It was it was difficult to think that there could be any sort of replacement for Maya Fey, but I think she makes a good case for this. Uh, and why? What the heck? Why not? I'll say one more positive thing. I like how difficult this mystery is to solve. Like this is really, really hard. Uh, Even after replaying this twice, I still struggled on the final part because it was just hard. It's hard to figure out how a murder could occur simultaneously in two different places. So, but let's talk about the negatives. Once again, like the Steel Samurai case, this is just way too long. And while case 1-3 was just way too long in the sense that it felt like filler, case 1-5 is just so long in the sense that it's just too much. That there's way too much. There's way too many witnesses. There's way too many subplots, and it feels like it could have been edited down a little bit. Like there wasn't really any need to have the Officer Meekin subplot or anything like that. They could have just, I don't know, trimmed it down a little bit. And then mm, the other negative is I don't really like the witnesses. I guess you could say. I guess they're unique. I mean, the defendant is also not very interesting either. For a character that has such an important job, you would think that they would return in a future game, but they don't. So they're just kind of meh. Like the characters are mostly meh. Really, the villain carries this, and Emma Sky. So where do I want to put this? I kind of want to put it in disappointing because I haven't even mentioned the terrible like putting the vase back together puzzle that you have to do in the final portion, which I have never once done without cheating. So no, I think I'm gonna put this in okay. I guess like it's really not that bad. I'm just complaining for the sake of complaining. All right, the second game. This is the first game I played in the series. My order was 2, 3, 4, and then I played 1, which is a little unfortunate because all of the second and third game continuously reference back to this first game. So I pretty much had most of the trials spoiled for me inadvertently. In this first case, Phoenix has amnesia, which is a pretty good way of introducing a tutorial without having to introduce a new character. I like how funny this case is. It is pretty funny. The fact that you can look at a baseball mitt and present it and say, "It was just a bunch of bananas, Your Honor." I don't know. That got a laugh out of me. I also like the defendant Maggie Bird. She's just a great character design. I also like her name, like the meaning of her name, how it just has to do with extremely bad luck. But this is just a blah case. I will talk about the how would I say the cliffhanger to this case in a second, but I think for now I'm going to rank it in. I think I'm going to rank it in disappointing because this is really only a case that's fun to play once. The second time and every time afterwards, it's just blah. It's kind of blah. So at the end of the case, you're reintroduced to Maya Fey, and I already said that this was my first game, so I had no idea who Maya Fey was. And in the second case, she's accused of murder, and I had no idea whether or not to trust her, which is pretty funny. Like that's a unique experience that you could only get by playing the games out of order. But Phoenix had this like undying faith that she was innocent, And in the first day of the trial, I really could not see a solution to this. Like, this was a really hard mystery. Every visual novel mystery seems to introduce a locked room puzzle, and I could not solve this one for the life of me. This also introduces the character of Franziska von Karma, and she was really intimidating in this case, but I feel like it didn't really matter how intimidating she was because the puzzle was just so difficult. Like, it was really hard. Um, I can't forget to mention Pearl Fay, who is just adorable as a button. Who else? I like the solution to the mystery. I'm not gonna talk about what the solution is, but I like how unconventional it is, and the fact that they've shown enough restraint to not really repeat that too often in the series. You would think they would have done it by now, but I like the solution to this series. Um, this is also the point where I want to mention just how great the soundtrack for the second game is. While the first and third games have really good individual tunes, I think the overall soundtrack in the second game is the best out of all of them. So, out of the first three games, I should say. So, I think I'm going to put this as great, like absolute great. Oh, do I want to put it as one of the greatest? Well, considering I know what's going to be coming up later, I think I have to go with great. Like, this is just really great. Like, I can see these two cases standing side by side. They're just fantastic. Fan freaking tastic. All right, the third case is I hate this. Let's not mince words here. The case is bad. Everything about it is bad. So it involves a circus trial, and I think let's just rant for a second. So I don't like the clown character. I don't like the puppeteer character. I don't like the puppet itself. I don't like how everyone is like creeping and crushing on a 16-year-old girl. That's just gross. Like, no thank you, Japan. Um, the solution to the mystery is like whatever, really. There wasn't really any need to have this be a murder case. Like, this is just like one of those cliche revenge plots that just, I don't know, nothing's interesting about it. Like, when they revealed who the mastermind was, like, there's supposed to be some semblance of tragedy behind it, but I really didn't care. Like, none of the characters were really that great. And uh this is one of those cases where I will say at least the anime saved this. Like, they included this case in the opening theme, and the animation for that was really great. Sorry, but and the storyline I think was slightly improved in the anime. So, and I just don't like puppets. Like, forget the puppets. So, yeah, waste of time. Definitely F tier. Like, so 2-4. Oh, what do I say about 2-4? Well, it's one of the greatest. Like, if not one of the greatest case ever. Like, the stakes are real right from the beginning. Like, Maya gets kidnapped, so Phoenix is already on edge. Like, the entire storyline. The defendant is great. All the witnesses are just fascinating. The first day of the trial, I was so sure I had figured out who the culprit was, and then the second day is just like spent bashing your head over, wow, you were wrong and you should feel guilty about this. And I did feel guilty. uh I also like Old Bag's character in this one. I said Old Bag wasn't that great, but I still like her in this case for sure. Who? What else do I want to talk about? Well, we got the granddaddy of them all, Mr. Edgeworth, returns. So in the entire second game, like, he's hinted to either be dead or missing or something, but his reintroduction to the series is just great. Like, you cannot tell what his mindset is, but you just know he's so confident of whatever it is he believes in. And I love the way that leads into Phoenix's own character development, because Phoenix really hasn't developed too much from like the beginning. I mean, the only thing you could say is like he's gotten smarter as an attorney, but his character development was mostly tied to Maya. So it was good to see that Phoenix actually went through a moment of personal growth. I also like that the trial can conclude with you making a choice on the fate. It basically leads to the same outcome, but I just like the fact that they included that choice. Uh, there's really no flaws I can think of, like absolutely none. Um, even though the first three games have been released like as a trilogy set across so many different consoles, and that's probably the game I would recommend anyone to play if they're playing a game for the first time. If you were to hypothetically go back and just buy the DS games individually one at a time, this case single-handedly would make you want to buy the second game. So it is just fantastic. All right, Trials and Tribulations. So I think Trials and Tribulations is one of the greatest visual novels of all time. Like, it's not often you could say that the third game in a series that both relies on storylines from the previous two games is still good enough to stand on its own. Like, that's just how excellent the writing is. Mm, I don't know. I don't want to talk overall. Let's just go through them one by one. So the first case, you get to play as Mia Fey, who hasn't been present in the series for quite a while. I mean, she's been there like here and there, but they haven't like really talked about her storyline until this case. So I like the villain. I like the defendant. I can't really talk about who either of them are because of spoilers, but I like I like the setup of the case. I also like how realistic the scenario is. You could say, oh well, there is no culprit behind this, or it was just like an act of God or something. Uh, this is also introduces all the storylines that are gonna continue on to the end of the game. So if there's one complaint I have is that I don't really think Mia Fey as a playable character is that compelling in this case in particular. It's really only after you've played the entire game and then go back to this case that you realize just how well the writing is. So, mm, I think I'm going to go with okay, I guess. And it's really just the Mia Fey portion of the story. Like, everything else I think is great here, but Mia Fey's part drags it down. I think the writer should have been a little bit more considerate to the fact that this is like the player's introduction to the game, so they didn't really do a good job of making me that compelling, at least at first. So the second case involves an urn being stolen at a department store. So no murder for once, but anyone who's played an Ace Attorney games know that murder is always present somewhere. So I like the introduction of Godot, who's also one of the greatest Ace Attorney characters of all time. Am I going to have to make a tier list for the characters? I mean, I think it'd be pretty obvious who would rank at the bottom and top, so I won't do that. But Godot is just amazing, like absolutely amazing. He's got great theme music. His personality is great. I like how he has a grudge against Phoenix Wright for no explainable reason. I mean, it does get explained, but for a long time you're just left in the dark, and you're just having this like this guy hate you so hard, and he's the prosecutor. As far as the mystery goes, I don't like the defendant. Like that is a negative I have to say. I don't like the defendant. Um, Mask to Mask, his theme song is pretty popular, but I think the fact that I don't like the character means that I'm just not able to get into the song like other people. Like I can respect the quality of it, but it'll never be on my VGM list. So, do I want to say anything else? Well, without spoiling it, I do like the plot twist that happens halfway through. Like that was a nice conventional way of or unconventional way of continuing the storyline. I feel like the mystery really picked up from that plot twist, and it was really difficult to solve this. Like the very last cross examination in this chapter is one of the hardest ever. Um, but I like the fact that they put that kind of challenge, even though it's in the second case. Like I just like the fact that they put that kind of challenge, and I like the little twist with the music, where whether you present the right answer or the wrong answer, they'll still continue the music. So you absolutely have to be certain that you know which is the correct evidence to present. So I think I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna go with great because Godot's character is great. I really like. I don't know. I like the mystery and I like Godot. So the third case, though, I have to be a little bit honest here. Like this was not that great. The first time I played this, I really loved this case. However, I think this, out of all the cases in the entire series, this one has aged the worst, and partially that's because of the stereotypes involving the chef. Like they're they're just not 2020 friendly, shall we say. I like the storyline involving the loan sharks. Like that kind of made me take the story a little bit more seriously. I don't like the old man witness. He's got a cool song, but he's just whatever. Like I don't. It's another case of stereotypes where I don't like it, where they make creepy old men just creepy for no reason. Um, One of my favorite parts of this trial is in the second day. They introduce this idea of a mirror being present at the scene of the crime, and I like how Phoenix just immediately says that he's not going to have any of it. Like he's just like, get this mirror out of here. There's no way that was there, and he tears apart the argument immediately. Like that was one of the coolest Phoenix moments in the entire series for me. So I feel like I think I'm gonna have to put this as disappointing because it just has not aged as well as the other cases. Okay, 3-4. So we have Edgeworth here, but everything about this case would have been great even without Edgeworth present. And I'm just gonna rank this overall as great. So even though this is a pretty short case, I just like how small the mystery is. You just have this small little area, and you don't really have many pieces of evidence or witnesses. And yet, this is a pretty hard case. Like, I actually struggled with it. I think I game overed on the part that involved figuring out a person's point of view looking across a bridge. Like, I could not figure out what they wanted from me. And anyone who's played a Ace Attorney game knows where they just like save the game and then present every single possible option until they just get past it. Uh, so that was one of mine. Mm, I don't know. It's really difficult to talk about this case without any sort of spoilers. But let me just say that the bottle mystery is just so great. I like the way it leads into the final case. Uh, there's no complaints really from me. So trial 5. Well, everyone is going to put this at one of the greatest, and so am I. This is the conclusion to Phoenix's storyline, as well as everyone else's storyline across the entire series. Like anyone who is stuck around basically has their storyline concluded, and you could tell that the writer of the series, Shu Takumi, knew that they did not want to continue Phoenix's storyline any further. I mean, obviously Capcom stepped in and said, we want you to keep going, but I thought this was an excellent conclusion. I like the setting of the case, like a monastery in the mountains. I like all the decisions that Phoenix makes. I like the unexpected gameplay changes, like halfway through the case where you're suddenly a different character. I like the trial. I like the fact that I was so enraptured in the story and the characters involving, like especially Iris, that I completely forgot that there was supposed to be some sort of culprit to the story. And when they came back to that at the very end and said like we haven't figured out who the culprit is, I was like, oh snap! I completely forgot there was a culprit. So I love this case. Like this was beautiful. Going back to the anime, they made a couple of random changes through for each episode across the series. However, I think the finale for the anime, which was this episode, by the way, was just great. They nailed it. It was perfect, absolute perfect. I have no complaints here. Like if the series had hypothetically ended right here, I would be completely satisfied. Maybe maybe Maya and Phoenix like confessing to each other like I love you as like a brother or sister would have been the cherry on top of it. Obviously that never happened. So my thoughts on the trilogy so far are actually really positive. There's only a couple of cases that are just like either bad writing or they just haven't aged very well or they're just not like good on a replay. Except for the circus one. The circus one can like die in a fire. Okay. Apollo Justice. This is where the graphics receive a major overhaul, and I was really impressed at the time. Like I know that they're just okay right now, but that going from the third game to the fourth game, you could just like feel it's like basically going from watching a VCR tape or like a VHS tape to watching a Blu-ray movie. Like you can just feel the quality. Apollo is now the main character, And I should mention that it's really difficult to talk about the cast of the fourth game without mentioning events that happened in the previous game, but I will do my best. If you are afraid of any spoilers, you can just skip ahead to a different timestamp. So, Apollo is a greenhorn. He's got a mentor character that becomes progressively more useless as this case proceeds. The defendant is extremely unexpected. Like, I think they nailed that. Um, I don't know what the circumstances were for the advertising for this game, but I can't imagine that they spoiled this. I hope they didn't, because the defendant is just so unexpected that I had no idea what to think when I was playing this. Also, the mystery involves a poker game, and if you've been reading my comments on videos, you can tell how much I'm like into card games. So this is this was such a great introduction to the series, or to like the new storylines. I love this case. I think this is one of the greatest. Like, the only flaw I could say is maybe the witness isn't that interesting, but the witness is just doing their job, so there's no complaints here. The entire second half of the case is just epic, like epic. It's not often where you could just say like I'm cheering after the characters to like take this person down, and and they're characters that were just introduced. Like that's how good the writing is in this very first case. Shame that it could not continue to the second case. Now, to be fair, I do like the first the first 20% of this case. Like, I like the introduction to Trucy Wright, like at least in a more serious manner. I like the I like how Apollo feels like on his first day of work at a new job. I can totally relate to having a boss who's just like unprepared for dealing with a new employee and has no idea what to do with you. Um, I like that he is exploring his surroundings, which gives you a good idea of what kind of town they live in, which isn't something that any of the games in the previous series like have really done well. Like you'd get the idea that you know where Maya lives, but you can't even tell where Phoenix works or lives. So this was it was good world building. However, the mystery is just like whatever. Like when I saw in the introduction like a wagon rolling, I was like, okay, this is already not realistic because um, I when I first played this, I had no idea that this took place in Japan. Like I wasn't worldly, I guess you could say. So I still assumed that this was taking place in California. I was like, all right, this is pretty unrealistic, or at the very least uninteresting. Uh, the mafia family, it sounds better on paper than the execution. Then there's the whole underwear subplot, which that just like once again that makes me uncomfortable. Like, why Japan? Why do you do this? It's not even for fan service reasons. It's just there to make both Apollo and you uncomfortable. So I don't know. I don't really like this case. I don't even really like the resolution to the mystery, other than I like the fact that it involves surgery, just because I was not expecting that. Like they got me there. So I'm gonna go with disappointing on this one. Like, especially the fact that this followed one of the greatest introductions ever, and to go straight to this was just like no. And then the third case, well, it just keeps on going downhill because this was a waste of time. Like, I have to lead off by saying what my biggest complaint is. The defendant, the fact that the defendant was arrested for this. It's a young child, and they're claiming that this child was handling like a 15-pound revolver. Just no, absolutely no. I don't care that the boy is 14 years old. Like he looks like he's 8, and he's so wimpy, and it it's just no. There's no way. It doesn't make any logical sense. Like, there's a comic by a person called Him Daisy. She made one for the Apollo Justice and for the first Investigations game, and her rant or her comics on this case were just really hilarious. So I don't know. I don't like this. Plus, one problem that both this case and the previous one have is that most of the characters are just like really rude to you. Like, they're really mean. The only exception is the prosecutor, ironically enough. Like, one of the few times where you actually have a positive relationship with the prosecutor. So I really didn't enjoy this case. I mean, there's also the fact that there's this music machine involved in the trial where you have to keep watching the same cutscene over and over and over again. Um, I don't know. Everyone was basically wearing a stupid hat, like where they just weren't thinking. Like it's impossible for a kid to have committed this crime, and everyone else is just like ignoring the obvious answer here. So I didn't like it. I don't like the mystery. I don't like the characters. There's nothing redeemable about this case. The fourth case, though. So let me talk about what the community thinks. Um, so this is Apollo's first game. However, he really doesn't get any sort of resolution to his storyline. I mean, there's like seeds of it. He concludes by saying like he still has a lot to grow, which is true, but he doesn't really grow that much throughout the game. And I can kind of agree with that that's a little bit of a problem. However, knowing where they go with Apollo's storyline, I'm okay with it. Like I think this was fine. Um, there's also the problem where Apollo has, shall we say, a family issue that still hasn't been resolved in any of the games after this one. That was a major mistake. They really should have just resolved it immediately. However, I love this. I love this case. I love how hard the mystery is to solve. I like how the solution to the mystery has never been done before in the series up to this point. I like the setting, Drew Studios. I like all the witnesses, which is pretty rare for me to say. I like the flashback part, which is another thing that the community doesn't like. They think it takes away from the main storyline of the game, and I just could not disagree more. Like I think that the flashback was extremely necessary to the plot of the game, and the fact that it was playable was just like the cherry on top. Um, Even when Officer Meekins shows up in the second portion of the investigation, I was just like, I missed you, man. I was so desperate to have anyone from the first Ace Attorney games return that I was even willing to handle Meekins. So this was just fantastic. Like the Apollo Justice is carried super hard by its first case and its last case. Like there are no complaints from me from either of those cases. Like they really are one of the greatest. I could see why someone would rank them lower if like they didn't like Apollo or they didn't like the direction the storylines took, but I like being surprised, and I liked the way it. I liked the way it was written, shall we say? Mm, Anything else I want to? Any other closing thoughts? Well, there's the fact that you get to choose your own ending in this one. However, it's really obvious which one is not the ending intended. I could see that as a complaint, but I mean, it's really just there as a bonus. Like, I don't think it was actually there to make you feel like uh, you're choosing your own ending. Like, there's obviously one right ending and one wrong ending. One complaint I will say though is that I don't like that the system introduced here, like the way to solve this case, was never mentioned again ever. Um, there is some fallout in the future games from the circumstances involving this case and like the events of the game as a whole. However, the system used to catch the criminal is never mentioning it. And I'm not talking about like the computer system, the Mason thing. I'm talking about the jury. So I don't know, just questionable writing there. But you can tell because there was a major gap in the mainline series from this one to the next one. Like there's a 7 year skip in the games, and it's a really long time skip in real life too. So I think the new team just didn't feel like it was worth continuing. They were like, oh well, it happened, so let's just move on, I guess. All right, the fifth game. So Phoenix is once again the main character. I mean, you could make an argument that there are other main characters. Like Athena Sykes is basically the major storyline throughout this story or throughout this game, but uh, Capcom and like the team in general were really pushing on Phoenix. And I think that this first case is actually hurt by focusing on Phoenix so much, because uh, at first you play as Athena Sykes, yet another Greenhorn attorney. However, I like her unique background, and you can feel that she has a different kind of perspective from the attorneys you played as so far. So I was looking forward to her gameplay, and the fact that it was basically like, no, we don't want to do this. We want you to play as Phoenix instead. It came out. I didn't like the way it came out. So I would have rather the trial just been interrupted or not concluded than having Phoenix come in and save the day. Um, so I'm going to put this as disappointing. However, I do want to say some more positive thoughts. I like the dub cast. I wasn't a fan when I heard that Phoenix was being recast, um, but I like the dub cast. I like the voiced cutscenes. The animated cutscenes really add a lot to this game. Like that was one of the best changes they made. It probably increased their budget by a lot, but that was a good investment, good idea. I like the introduction where the courtroom blows up. Like that is a good hook. That is a good hook to get you on the storyline. So I really like this one. Anything else I want to say? The person you're defending is really cute. Like I wish they had used her character more in the sequel, but oh well. So yeah, I feel like Phoenix inadvertently ruins this case. Like as long as you did not play as him, I feel like this would have been a ranked higher. But because he just invades his Athena's personal space, I was like, no. All right, the second case. So the first time I played this case, I really didn't like it, like at all. However, I think I've gained a little bit more appreciation for the mystery. So, in the first case in each of the games, they always spoil who the culprit is in the introduction. And in this game, they spoil the culprit in the second case. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, the first case was already heavily tutorialized. Like, 5.1 is the most over tutorialized introduction in the entire series. Like, even. I mean, 1.1 is probably the only one that can compete with it, with how ham-fisted the tutorials are. Um, so I was not happy that this spoiled the culprit because it kind of ruins the mystery for you. However, uh, on rewatch recently, I noticed when you're playing this, all the evidence and the circumstances of the case all point to it not being possible for that person to have committed the crime. Like it's actually impossible. So I think that's actually a pretty unique way to write a mystery, where you know who the culprit is, but there's like no conceivable way they could have committed the crime. So I do like that. However, the fact that I did not notice that on my first playthrough, I mean, it's kind of mean to say that it's my fault for, or it's the game's fault when it's really my own for like not paying attention to that. But I didn't like I don't like the case otherwise. Like the witnesses are not very interesting. Um, the town that you go and visit, filled with yokai, is like I don't know. I didn't know anything about yokai before I played this game. I mean, I've heard about it in a lot more games now, but at the time had no idea. So it just felt like tons of exposition for things that actually weren't really important to the case overall. It was just there to add like it was just world building for the setting of the case. This is also the proper introduction of Athena Sykes because this case takes place before 5.1. I like the rapport with Apollo and Athena. If you were to play this game blind, you would probably be led to believe that Athena is going to be the sidekick because there's always some sort of female sidekick character in all of these games. And it does take that role for this game, or for this case, I should say. But I don't know. I like their rapport, shall we say? Apollo also, in general, in this fifth game, he hardcore carries it. Like his character development is just freaking fantastic. It is on point, like 10 out of 10. So, I don't know. Really, I do want to put this as a waste of time, but I think Apollo and Athena's introduction were pretty well done. Like Athena's not a bad character. She's just she just has poor writing surrounding her, unfortunately. The third case, where you actually do get to play as Athena, and this case was actually great. Like I really love this case. Mm, this was one of those mysteries where I got so fixated on one of the witnesses, and I was so sure that they had committed the crime. And when they revealed, like, no, it's actually impossible for that person to have committed the crime, I was like, no, I can't figure it out. But on replay, it is extremely obvious who the mastermind is behind this case. So I don't know. That was just my own stupidity. I like all the witnesses in this case. I especially like the girl who wears a cardboard box on her head, the reporter. I don't know. She's one of my favorite witnesses ever. I don't really know why. I guess I like her little pen flipping thing that she does with her fingers. But she's just an excellent character. I wish she had returned, but unfortunately that was not the case. I also like the what's it called? The moral background, I guess you could say, of the story, where you have to think about, do the ends justify the means, which is actually the theme for the entire game. Like the circumstances involving the fifth game are the dark age of the law, and whether or not you can take circumstances into your own hands, which if you played the fourth game, you already know that some of the characters have done that. So I like the continuation of that theme. It's really unfortunate that you pretty much don't get to play as Athena again after this. Like, there's one more time, but I really liked her in this case. I also like her little mini game involving the mood matrix. Like, thankfully, you don't have to play as her to have that mini game involved in all the cases, which is great because I love the mood matrix. So yeah, this was a great trial. Like, I really like this one. All right, 5-4. 5-4 and 5-5 are really connected to each other, so I'll try to be short on this one. This one involves basically the equivalent of NASA, a murder happening near a spaceship. I really like the settings for that. The defendant is kind of blah. I mean, the story, like the little character arc they go through this chapter is heartwarming, but this is once again one of those cases that's hardcore carried by Apollo. Like, Apollo's, you can really feel his passion for this case, and you don't know why, but it becomes immediately apparent in the next chapter. And I don't know, Apollo really hardcore carries this, so I think I'm going to put this in okay, I guess, because Apollo is just saving it. I still haven't even talked about the detective. I have to say, I'm kind of angry. Well, not angry, but like disappointed that they introduced this new detective character and not have Gumshoe. I mean, they really could have just had Gumshoe there anyway and had this new character. Like, I would not have minded two different detective characters. It's also weird in English, the fact that his catchphrase involves the word justice, but they almost never reference the fact that Apollo Justice and him have that it's the same name and this, like, the same word. Like, I guess that's just because it doesn't translate that well in Japanese. The two can be continued portion of this is just great. Like, I do like the cliffhanger for that. The fifth case, though, where do I want to put this? I think I'm going to also put this in okay, I guess. Like, I would not have minded if they had just combined these two portions together, because maybe I would have been able to, or been more willing to put this in great. But here's a few of the flaws. One is that the stakes for this trial are absolutely through the roof. Like, you can really feel like if you don't find the criminal and like solve the mystery for this, like, the world will actually be in a worse place. And it's not often in a Phoenix or an Ace Attorney game where the stakes are that high. There's also the fact that most of the characters are like intimately connected to the events of this. All of the storylines except for Case 2 have been building towards this moment, and so what am I complaining about? Well, all the cases after this one, well, I guess sequentially, the only ones that take place after this one are Game 6. They don't reference this, like, ever again. Like, the only thing they reference, I guess, is the development of the prosecutor, who I haven't mentioned, by the way. The prosecutor is really great. He has a few recurring jokes that I think get a little old, but I love the attitude. I love his theme song. I like the little bird he has. I like the relationship he has with one of the three playable characters. I won't spoil which one. But yeah, he's the only one that actually gets some sort of like different outcome that impacts his future in the series. So I think the writers kind of botched that. The twist that comes at the end of the case involving a piece of dialogue, like a character, like the playable character you're playing as. I'm sorry, the character you're playing as thinks closely about the circumstances of the case and realizes that one line that a person previously said is actually the solution. And while they were thinking that, I had just realized like the mistake that character made, or not the mistake, but like the solution to the mystery. And I thought that was really well done. Like I really like the fact that I I worked it out along with the rest of the game. So that was pretty good. Anything else I want to talk about? Well, there's a character that returns from the Phoenix Wright games that is absolutely just fantastic. Like, if you want more details on that, just go and like look at VGM number 900. Like that I think that'll tell you the circumstances about that. Anything else? I don't think so. So let's just conclude this fifth game with the DLC. So the DLC has to explain like why Phoenix is a playable character again, because his storyline in the fourth game, I mean, it led to a point where this was a possibility, like that he could continue being a playable character. However, it wasn't really necessary. So I do like that they actually answered that question in a full case. I also like the fact that Pearl returns. She doesn't really do too much. She's just basically a normal witness, but the fact that they put Pearl in there was just great. I love that. The witnesses are also really great. I like the mystery. I like the solution to the mystery as well. Like that was extremely well done. So I really like that. However, what I don't like and what I don't really like about the fifth game as a whole is that the investigations are just so painfully slow. Like you're usually trapped in this room where you can like spin around and get different perspectives. And this one involving like a pool where a killer whale is like lives, it just takes forever. It feels like it took an hour the first time I played, and it's just no. Like the pacing is too slow. Plus, there's the fact that they basically killed the parrot joke in this one. Like as soon as you knew that the defendant was an animal, you're like, okay, well, we already know this is coming. And when it comes, it's so forced and ham-fisted. Like watching Phoenix go fleet fleet fleet. I think I think it's funnier hearing me say that than the game actually portraying it. So where do I want to put this? I think I'm going to put this in the okay, I guess. And that's really my feelings on the fifth game as a whole. Like I think the fifth game is actually one of the weakest games in the entire series. There is no one of the greatest. There was definitely the potential there, but I think the writing is just too slow. I think the investigations are too slow, and I think a lot of the storylines just feel incomplete. Like really, Athena and Apollo are the only ones I could say like came out of this like as better characters. I mean, I suppose you could say the prosecutor as well, but the prosecutor plays such a minimal role in the sequel that I don't even know if that counts. So yeah, let's just go ahead to the sixth game. So the sixth game, when this came out, I like binged it in a week. So I think you can already tell like that I have pretty good feelings about this one. The first case is going to get a grade from me because the stakes are real right from the very beginning. Phoenix goes to visit Maya in a different country, but before he can meet her, he gets roped up in a murder case, and he's completely unaware about how serious this is going to be for him. So everything about the area just felt threatening. The judge feels threatening. I mean, I like the fact that they portrayed a different judge. It's pretty rare when you don't get the normal judge. Like, the man does not die. And apparently these judges don't die either. So, I like the return of the Gaspin Payne, who I don't think it was expected. So, what else would I say? Mm, oh, I know. So, the witness and the culprit, oh my goodness, they are one of the best ever. The transformation that character goes through halfway through the trial is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Like, it is just so funny. Like, I mean, I can't even talk about it without laughing. Like sometimes I will go back and like look up that scene and just watch other people's reactions to it. Like it is that freaking funny. Like it is just so funny. And I think the witness is what really carries that case. Like it is just so funny. I also think that Phoenix is finally in a role again where I can take him seriously as an attorney. Like he's it feels like he's actually growing. Like he put himself in a very dangerous situation that he's never been in before. So There's also the fact there's a part involving the trial itself, involving the memories of the dead. But I will go more about that in the future case. The second case, ooh, this one is also really great because Apollo finally gets like some sort of continuation to his storyline, and the defendant is Wright, who is is basically Apollo's assistant in the fourth game. Although she kind of like gets a diminished role in the fifth game, which is another sign of like poor writing. Like they just really did not know what to do with her character. Foreshadowing for what happens with Athena in this game. But I really liked the bond that Apollo and Trucy had. I liked the fact that Apollo was basically on his own in this entire case. Like he solved this mystery. He did everything on his own. Like he really did feel like a hero by the end of it. And I also love the pacing of this case. Like the first time I played it, I was like, oh man, this is going to be multiple parts, and they're just going to drag out certain characters, and just it's going to feel like it's going to take forever. But no, this case ended exactly where it should have, and I love it for that. Like, I don't have any complaints about this. Like, I really like it. The third case. So the first time I played this, I love this case, but every time I've seen this afterwards, I think my opinion drops a little bit. So let's talk about the positives. So Phoenix meets Maya again, and that reunion is a little bit heartwarming. I like the fact that you can feel that Maya has grown older, but she still has some sort of like the childish charm to her. What else? I like how small the mystery is, at least in the first half. Like there really isn't that many ways that the crime could have occurred, and yet it's still compelling and it's still complicated. So I do like that. This is also the time to mention that the trials feature a way where you can see the victim's last memories. It's not as gruesome as it sounds, but it's basically like if they had a camera strapped to their heads, like you could see what's going on. Although they also have like their thoughts like overlaid on top of the screen, so you could see like what they were thinking at the time or feeling. Mm, so I like the first half of this case. I also like how the first half concludes too, because it really gets serious. Like it continues the serious theme introduced in the first case. However, I think the reason I'm going to go with disappointing is actually a problem with the sixth game I have as a whole, which is that once the first half concludes, Maya's role in the story changes from like character to plot device. Like her powers are basically just used as a way to move the story forward, and I really don't like that. I don't like the way they treated her character. Um, I mean, one more positive thing I'll say is I do like the foreshadowing for what's going to happen in the fifth case involving Apollo. So that was pretty well done. But yeah, I think the treatment of Maya Fey took this case down for me. Also, the resolution to the mystery is just it's not that interesting. Like the characters basically have like the witnesses have like almost no emotion. The only one that has emotion is like the one that has like this huge beard and is like a completely out of place character. And when you later learn that that character is actually from that area, like I didn't buy that. Like he felt like he was a foreigner to me. Okay. The fourth case, terrible, terrible, absolutely terrible. So Athena, this is the only trial in the sixth game where she gets to be playable, and her case has nothing to do with the storyline introduced in the game. I mean, you could argue that the second case in the sixth game is not really related to the storyline, but I disagree with that. Um, so she has to defend a worker at a soba shop, and I don't know, all the witnesses are annoying. I know there's like some sort of positive feelings from the community about the one witness who has a theme song named after him. I think his name is Wendo Tendo or something like that. Uh, I don't know. I didn't like that character. I don't really like anything about this case. Like, I have nothing positive to say about it. Maybe the most positive I could be is the fact that the prosecutor returns, but he's really just there, like, to have someone to talk to. Like, he's basically, it's not like a mentor. He's like half assistant, half mentor. So, I hate this case. I hate it. Maybe I should just like rename this tier to I hate it because I really do hate this case. So the fifth case is a really good finale. But I think I'm going to put it in okay, I guess. Let me talk about all the positives. I like the wrap up of Apollo's storyline. I think if you didn't like the direction that Apollo's storyline was going on from like the end of the fourth game and like hinted at in the fifth game, you're not going to like this case. Let's talk about the first half first. This is where you get to visit some nostalgic locations, and you get to see some real character building for Apollo, which is just heartwarming, and which later turns to heartbreaking. Um, I don't know. The first half is just so good. Like, why can't they? Why couldn't they have just deleted the fourth case and replaced the first half with this one? Like, I would not have minded them just like stretching out the fourth case a little bit, or the first half of the fifth case and deleting the fourth case from the game. Uh, the second half, I really like the villain. Like, and not even just talking about the culprit. Like, there's a villainous character like there, and you're not sure if they're the culprit, but it doesn't really matter. Like, they are just like so overwhelming in their power that you feel intimidated by them. Like, how are you going to overcome them? And I feel like this was a case where you could actually feel Apollo surpass Phoenix Wright. So the new team who composed the fifth and sixth games, they really did. They really did Apollo like a lot of justice. Ha ha ha. Like, his character development was great. I haven't talked about this girl right here, who is like the 13-year-old priestess. I thought she was going to be like the assistant character throughout the game, and I mean, she does play that role for a very, very short time. However, I like her storyline. I like the way it concludes. I like the fact that it's tied into the mystery of this case. So, just about everything in this case I like. The only thing I can't say positive about this case, it really ties into another problem with the sixth game as a whole, is the treatment, or not the treatment, but the writing of the prosecutor character. So the prosecutor is present in all the cases except for the first one, although he is mentioned a couple times. And he's even present in the terrible 6-4 case, which doesn't make any logical sense. I do know they explain, like, oh, he traveled by plane to go and visit this case, but like, it's just dumb. Terrible writing. So I could buy him more in this case doing it because of his, like, he has personal stake to be in the second case, shall we say. So I could understand it for this one, but this fourth one, for everything about the fourth case, it just like drags the game down. Anyway, so talking about this character, I think the problem with the writing of him is that he is basically whatever the writers need him to be. He will say or do anything that is necessary for the plot to continue. So I don't know. He's just very inconsistent about who he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to be doing. So I don't like him that much. So let's conclude with the DLC case. So the DLC case is basically fan service, and not like perverted fan service, but just like fan service for people who've been playing all the games up until this point, because they reintroduce a bunch of characters that haven't appeared for a long, long time. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. Like, I think this is actually pretty average, so I'm going to put this in the middle. And part of that is that I don't think... I think that this is just really, like, a case, like, to get warm, fuzzy feelings about all the characters being in one spot again. But the mystery itself is just not that great. There's nothing really wrong with the victims or the culprit or anything. It's just a kind of blah storyline. There's also the fact that, despite the fact that all of these characters reunite, they don't really have much character development. I mean, the closest you could say is Edgeworth, who, like, finally gives a stance on how he feels about personal relationships, but I don't know. Personal relationships weren't really, like, the biggest focus, I guess you could say. I mean, they kind of were. Like, Phoenix and Maya's relationship was pretty important, and so was Apollo and Phoenix's relationship, and Apollo and Trucy's relationship, but I don't know. This is just a really blocked, like, case. Like, I could put this lower, but I think the fan service, like, warmed my heart at least enough that I could put it in the middle. All right, let's talk about the investigations games real quick. So, one of the difficulties I'm going to have talking about the spin-off games is that generally the storylines, like, continue from one chapter to the next. Like, they're all pretty connected. Like, there usually isn't filler, so it's going to be difficult to talk about these without spoilers, but once again, I'm going to try. if you're afraid I'm going to talk about spoilers, then you can skip ahead, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to mention anything outrageous. So in the investigations games, you play as Edgeworth, and you specifically play as Edgeworth between the third and the fourth game, because, even though he does not appear in the fourth game. So his fate was pretty much left unknown for a very long time. So it was good to have a spin-off series concerning him. This first case involves his office, which is, I don't know. I like the small bottle episodes where it's the mystery is really small, but it's just fun to solve. So this was a good tutorial. I also like the fact that Maggie Bird returns. I like the fact that Edgeworth's partner is Detective Gumshoe, who is just amazing. I love Detective Gumshoe's attitude on anything in life. So I think I'm just gonna go with okay. I guess I think this was passable. I think the small scale is what really hurts it. This was just a pretty average case, but there's positive things I could say about it. The second case, though, I think is disappointing because the villain and the witnesses are just partially they're annoying and partially they're not compelling. The plot of the investigations game concerns a smuggling ring, so all of the chapters are involved with the smuggling ring in some way. And this one was just the most tenuous. I mean, since it involves a plane, you could see oh well, the plane was used for smuggling, so it must something involving a plane murder would tip them off that this has to do with the smuggling ring. So I could see that. However, I don't know. I didn't find it compelling. So the setting though is actually pretty nice. I like the fact that Edgeworth is handcuffed in the beginning and he has to logic his way out of that. That was a cool scene. But everything else, I don't know. I don't really like it. I really don't like the culprit either. The culprit is so blah. Both investigations game have at least one case where the culprit is just bottom tier. But this case, it actually does not have the bottom tier because that goes to the third case. So this case is just trash, absolute trash. You get the introduction to Kay Faraday, which is the longest time they wait to introduce the partner character. I guess because Gumshoe was kind of filling the roles up until that point. However, I wish they had introduced Kay Faraday earlier because she was really important. I know she kind of makes a cameo in the first case, but that doesn't count. So Kay Faraday is the best part of the first investigations game, and also the best part of this case. Everything else is really bad. I don't like the fact that Mike Meekins returns. I don't like the writing development that Olbag has received. So her tier status, I guess you could say, dropped really hard because of this case. The witnesses that are brand new to the case and the culprit itself are just terrible, terrible writing. Am I supposed to pity them? Because I feel no pity, absolutely no pity, nothing, nothing at all. And the fact that once again this was related to a supposed smuggling ring is just it's absurd. They really should have deleted this. This now I'm gonna rename this again, although I'm not gonna do that. But this should be delete this from the game. This is not necessary to tell a compelling story. So yeah. The fourth case, it features a flashback. I think I will pick it as great. So, in the investigations games, they'd mention trials several times, although you never actually participate in a trial. There's still cross-examinations. The gameplay is very similar to a trial from all the other games, but it's not the same setting, shall we say. I really like the introduction to Gumshoe and Edgeworth's relationship. I also like how Kay Faraday is intertwined into the story. It's just another way the character was well written. I like the villain to the story. I like how would I say this? I like how convoluted. No, I like how connected the mystery is because there's basically 2 or 3 mysteries going on, and I like how as you solve each portion of it, you can feel how everything's connected. So I like the little web that it creates. This was just, and this is also one of those cases where you can get pretty emotional. So I like this case. I like it a lot. The fifth case, though, I think I'm going to put this in okay, I guess, which is unfortunate because I actually like this case a lot. But the reason I have to put it down is because this is just way too long. the pacing is poor. Like it's a case that's about like 3 hours longer than it needs to be. You expose who the mastermind is behind the entire game actually pretty early, like I think 60% of the way into this case, and then the rest of the chapter is just focused on taking that character down. I mean, it feels good taking that character down. I also really like that character's objection voice, which came out of left field. Like I wasn't expecting that character to say objection, but I really like them. Going back to the Him Daisy comics, I really like the what's it called, the rant that the comic artist had on the villain, just saying like, you can't handle this, objection, objection, objection. So um I think that this is just okay. So I don't really have anything else to say about this one. Like, I mean that's pretty poor to say that about a finale, but like it really is blah. Like the fact like Old Bag and Larry both return, and they're both annoying again. Like they're not like the funny characters; they're just the annoying characters, and everything is just so slow. And then there's a twist that carries over from this case. I'm not really gonna say like how it connects, but there's a there's a twist that involves this case, and it's just like whatever, really. Like, I mean, I think I liked that twist more than the actual mystery involved in this case. So I think that just says that this case had questionable writing. So Investigations 2 is one of the best games in the entire series. So the first case, I'm going to put it as great because it involves the murder of a president, and I mean, where do you go from there? Like that's already a great place to just start this new game. They quickly reintroduce all the characters. Like they waste no time. Like the pacing on this is just really good. Like everything about this case is just great. So um, the recurring storyline here is just immediately more interesting. Like they do mention that the smuggling ring from the previous game is tied to this, but I think the fact that it involves the murder of a president is more compelling of a hook to me. So the second case, though, I think I'm going to go with disappointing, honestly. I think this is the weakest case in Investigations 2. You have the introduction of this character, Courtney, who is a judge. Unfortunately, her storyline in this game is pretty weak. Like, I like her design, I like her voice, I like the things she says, but her relationship to the plot, it really isn't that interesting. It's more to just provide a moral dilemma about what Edgeworth is going to do, which I did like that aspect because this could have been Edgeworth's last game, and you would have never known. Well, you would have known what had happened to him, but you would have never seen him again. So this is also the introduction to Sebastian Debest's character, and I really like the the very first time you cross-examine him. Like that was one of the funniest cross-examinations in the series. So it was basically the character is just like going, "Oh, what did he say?" Do I have anything else to say about this case? Like, the reasons it's poor is I don't like the villain. The witnesses are just kind of blah. The setting is also kind of blah. I don't know. I don't really like it that much. The third case, though, is one of the greatest. Like, you get to play as Edgeworth's father, so I feel like that's already what makes this top tier. But no, let's go further. This involves a mystery that took place both in the past and is affecting a different case in the present. And I really like when mysteries do that, where you have to solve like two different mysteries that are connected like by decades or like a long amount of time passing between them. Larry shows up again, and he's not annoying for once. I like the fact that he refers to Elise Donham as like his mentor still, despite the fact that she's not in this game for spoilery reasons. But what that would also make sense because this case only takes place about like 2 weeks after the case where he started training under her. Anything else I want to say? I mean, Von Karma shows up, so and that's not really a spoiler. It's just like he's there, so I like that, of course. What else? Sebastian's role in this is just a waste of time. Like they clearly said, all right, well, Sebastian's going to be an important character later on, so we have to have him show up. But I didn't like his appearance in this case. Like it really felt like filler. Like they could have just solved the mystery of the room without having anyone there to like interrupt and drag the story on. Um, but yeah, I really like this case. Like, it is just great. Like, it is a great mystery, which I think is just like, I think this is a good case. Like, regardless of character development or anything, like it has all that, but the fact that it's just a good mystery is just great. So the fourth case is also one of the greatest of all time. Like, I would probably rank this one higher than the third case, but I don't have a tier higher than that, and I don't want to put. I mean, I could put them in the imaginary parrot tier, but I'm not going to do that. So this one, Edgeworth has to make a decision involving the future of both Kay Faraday and himself, and I just thought it was one of the most touching things in the entire series. Um, I when I first saw it, I was like, "Is Edgeworth actually going to do this? And are the writers actually going to continue this?" Because keep in mind, we had no idea what was going to happen to Edgeworth after this game. So the fact that this felt permanent, like I don't know, I really felt the moment here. So uh, Kay Faraday's storyline, like she's been I wouldn't say she's weak, but she's only like loosely connected to the game. So I really like the fact that they dedicate an entire case to why she has to still stick around and like be involved in the plot. So that was good writing. That was very good writing. Unlike before, where they brought back the prosecutor from Dual Destinies into Spirit of Justice for just whatever reason. So anything else positive I want to say? The villain is great. Like one of top tier villain for sure. Like that person is just a complete scumbag. So, uh, but let's go ahead to the fifth case. And surprisingly, I am not going to put this in one of the greatest because I think the pacing is a little bit off. And mm, when the writing is really good, I don't mind how long the case is, but I think the problem is that this starts off at a movie set that seems to have nothing to do with the rest of the game. So you do realize eventually that it has pretty an impactful point to the story, but I don't like that at first. However, let's talk about everything else I do like. I like the conclusion to Sebastian's story, like it actually makes him a redeemable character. I like the conclusion to Edgeworth's story and Courtney's story. Um, that is really well done. I like the fact that the mystery calls back to the very first case in the game. So good writing right there to have continuous like the continue the plot all the way through the game. Anything else I want to say? Well, I haven't. I guess I could mention the mastermind. So the mastermind would probably put like other people would probably put this case at the very top just because of the mastermind's like twist alone. But I don't know. If you were playing this game blind, I could kind of see how it would blindside you, but I think it was foreshadowed pretty early that something is up with some of the characters in this game, like as early as the third case. So I think that you could have figured it out. I like the fact that they provided enough clues, but I don't think that the twist of the villain is enough to put this in one of the greatest. Um, and I also don't think that the confrontation with that character is all that great either. I mean, the animation is great, but the actual things they're talking about, I don't know. The character is portrayed to be much smarter than they look, shall we say. So I don't really like it where personalities come out of nowhere. So yeah. Okay, the versus games, I don't really have too much to say about them. I will say though that the trials are the best part of the entire like Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright games, but I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. Like let's see if I can knock this out in like 5 minutes or less. So the first case is actually great. Like this is the most normal out of all the cases, and it feels like a Phoenix Wright case. It feels pretty normal as well. Um, do I have anything else to say? I mean, I guess I don't know. I just like it. I like how it's pretty unexpected too. Like it is connected to the rest of the game, but Professor Layton doesn't have anything to do with this trial. So I just like how it's a normal Phoenix Wright case, and I like the way that a different team wrote it. So yeah. The second case, it introduces the rules of the witch trials. So the stakes are pretty high. I also like the unique cross examinations. So I'm gonna put this in okay, I guess. And I think the problem with the reason I don't want to rank this higher is just this case feels longer than it actually is. It's actually pretty short, but it feels longer than it actually is. I also think that despite the fact that I like the new cross examinations, they're they're just too easy, shall we say. Like there's really not much difficulty. Like I feel like you'd have to not be paying attention whatsoever to not be able to figure something out here. Um, so yeah. And I think this case is really overshadowed by a case that occurs later on, like the very next one actually, because it's extremely similar. The only difference is the defendant, instead of being a character introduced in this game, the character or the defendant in the third case is Maya Fey. So the stakes are already pretty personal, and plus the conclusion to this case is just like heart wrenching. So I'm gonna put this one as great, if for nothing else than the conclusion. Like that was just really well done. I also like the fact that the fallout from this case like can be felt for quite a long time, because there's a pretty big gap in the story before you get back to the fourth case. So yeah. And speaking of the fourth case, I do want to put this as great, but I think I'm going to put this as meh. And I think it's gonna be because the storyline is just blah. Well, not blah, but it's just like it kind of goes out with a whimper. Like the stakes in the trial just like don't go anywhere. So yeah. Um, it's basically like how would I say it? The trial sort of loses its meaning halfway through the case. So as a trial, it's kind of weak. The storyline is already pretty good. However, the way the Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright handles its chapters, these are like only 4 chapters in a 10 chapter game. So the other chapters are all focused on Layton. So um, I would say that the conclusion on the Layton portion is a little bit better. I mean, technically the game ends with the trial, but it's really the Layton portion that carries this. So I would probably put the Layton portion of this last part as great if it existed, but it doesn't. So let's just go on. And then the final part where I wanted, the whole reason I wanted to do this list is on this website, on tiermaker.com, the community response to Gyakuten Saiban, or the Great Ace Attorney, is not very positively received. And I think part of the reason for that is that there's not like an easily accessible translation. I mean, now there is, but at the time, I'm sure this tier was created, like people didn't really know it, and they were just ranking the cases just either from what they read online or just ranking them because they haven't played them, which is not good because it creates negative feelings towards games that haven't even been properly released. So I think the Great Ace Attorney series is actually really good. I think my overall thoughts on them together is that they're 2 halves of one story, so it's really difficult to rank them, like saying, oh, well, the first Great Ace Attorney is a great game, but the second one is kind of blah. Like, you can't really say that. Like, you have to judge it as a whole. So as a whole, I think it's actually really good. Let's just knock these cases out. I can't really talk about these because of spoilers, but I think my rankings and like my overall feelings on it will get through to you. So the first one, it's just like okay, I guess, because it's introducing you to the setting, and you can feel that Sherlock Holmes is going to play a part in the story because there's already like tropes like that continue from his like the actual books released in real life. This also has the multiple witnesses in the cross-examination that came from Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. In fact, most of the gameplay aspects from Layton versus Phoenix Wright are carried over to the Great Ace Attorney series. So if you like that game, you will definitely love this one for sure. Um, I like most of the cast. However, their introductions into this are just like okay. Like they're basically just stereotypes. Like I really like the friend character, but his writing is just like pretty cliche. I also like the villain character. I'm not sure how they're going to translate this in English if they ever do, but the villain character, one of their like defining moments involves speaking English and like actually speaking English in the game. Like you can hear it, like it's voiced. So I don't really know how they're going to translate that. I mean, I guess they could just make up a language like the one from the fourth games, or they could just have her speak French or something. But I don't know. It's interesting to see. The second case, I'm also gonna. I think I'm actually gonna put this as disappointing. So the problem with this one is that this is the only case in the entire series that does not feature a trial of any sort, and I think that's just. And that's just unfortunate because the stakes are. It's not that the stakes are high, but that the circumstances involving the case and the victim are pretty severe. Like, you really feel like the main character is like in a hole, like, and the only reason they get out of this situation is basically because of Sherlock Holmes. Like Sherlock Holmes is not the one that solves the mystery, but his presence is what allows the main character to like continue on for the rest of the game. So I don't know. The setting is just kind of boring. I mean, I don't know. I really like the music in this case, so I think that's what saves it for me. The third case, though, is one of the greatest. Like the whole reason to play the Great Ace Attorney series is pretty much because of this case. This is just fantastic. Like it's basically the main character is way in over his head and doesn't really know much about what's going on, and what's going on is not going to be explained until later on in the game. If I had a complaint, though, I don't like that it's not really foreshadowed in the first two cases. Like the first two cases are basically like the introduction, and then here is where it finally gets real, and boy does it get real. So yeah, I also really like the new gameplay aspects they added in the trial that were not present in the first one, because it takes place in London, and London has slightly different rules about how they do trials. Like for example, there's a jury, like something that has not been seen for a very long time, shall we say. And I don't know, this is just one of the perfect cases, like really perfect cases. Like this pretty much saved the series. Like as soon as I saw this case, I was hooked. Like I knew that the rest of the games were going to be the rest of the first game and the second game were going to be good. The fourth case, although I have to say it's a waste of time. Like the humor in it is okay. Like I like the humor of the defendant, but everything else is kind of just meh. Like really meh. Like really really meh. Um, the the victim is just like, I don't know. Do you really care about the victim? Like the victim is just basically a faceless character. This is just a brief aside, but in one of the investigations game, one of the victims is a character you never meet that's just called Dead Man. Like I'm not even joking. Like they actually changed the spelling of it to make it look like it's a normal name, but when you say it out loud, it's just Dead Man. So that's basically the equivalent of the victim in this case. Um, I feel like this is really just like fan service, like people who enjoy Sherlock Holmes stories, because like there's a lot of references to his stories. However, the mystery itself is just not compelling. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. I don't want to spend time on it. The fifth case though is great. I would say it's great. It's not. It's a conclusion to the storyline introduced in the third case. Um, so I do like the answer to that. I also really like the defendant and the storyline they go through. And the defendant actually returns in the second game in a great role. So that was good decision. So I can't really talk about anything without spoiling anything. I guess the one complaint I had, the reason that this is not one of the greatest, is that the circumstances involving the victim are just a little bit too obvious, at least in the beginning. Like you already know like who the victim is going to be just based on like how the writing is going. Like it's like, oh, cliche, like they're putting themselves in danger. I wonder what's going to happen. And I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about this. I guess the fact that it's to be continued. If Great Ace Attorney had ended on this, I probably would have ranked this low. In fact, I probably would have dropped all the cases a tier. Well, maybe not this one, but the fact that it does continue makes my feelings pretty positive on this one. The first case on the second game is also really great. You get to play as another character, and anytime the series does that and does it well, I have to give props to. I really like the setting. The mastermind behind the culprit is just like whatever. Like they don't really feel evil, and even the writing suggests that character's not evil. It's just like a victim of circumstance and like poor decision making. However, the hook about who the victim is just extremely well done. So props to that. The second case, I also want to put this in bottom tier because this is basically part 2 of the case 4 from the first Great Ace Attorney game. But I think I'm going to put it in disappointing because at least it gives a reason for the fourth case in the first game to exist. So I'll give it that. However, the witnesses are just annoying. Like I really don't like the defendant. I don't really like anything about this case. Like there's nothing positive I can say. Well, no, one positive. So the defendant has this like twitchy habit that the way the game portrays it is like the equivalent of breakdancing. So that moment made me laugh, but that was the only thing I liked. It takes place in a recap of the first case, so I give them kudos to making it entertaining. The third case is also great because this is basically so the way the writer planned to handle the Great Ace Attorney series was to have it as a trilogy. However, the first game didn't sell that well, so they had to like condense it down. And I'm pretty sure that the second game would have ended on this case because this case is super super long. Like it is basically like two full cases put together. Um, the mystery is I can't really spoil much, but the mystery is really great. I like how it involves the prosecutor, who I have not mentioned any of the prosecutors, but the prosecutor plays a pretty important role in this story. Um, what else could I say? What else could I say? The the culprit, actually, just like the storylines involving the culprit are just really fascinating. Like, since the Great Ace Attorney games take place about 120 years before the rest of the series, like there are times where certain technologies don't exist, and you have to like think in the circumstances that the characters would actually be living in, and I think that's really fun and compelling writing. So I like this case, and then the way it ends is just, oh man, it's like so great. If there had hypothetically been like a second game and then the third game would have continued from this point, I probably would have been really disappointed by the second game because the ending on that kind of cliffhanger is just like, how dare you? But since it does continue, I'm going to be positive on it. So for the fourth and fifth case, they're basically one half each of the same trial. But I'm gonna put the first half as okay, and then the fifth as great. So the fourth half, the fourth case is just, I don't know, like they have to resolve a lot of plot points to get to where they want to go for the second half. So it feels really stretched out. However, this has a really good hook because the victim is someone I would have never expected. I would have never expected that character to be a victim in any of these cases. And I think this is actually unique to the entire series, that the victim is just so important as like a character. So that really shocked me, and I think that's probably why I have some pretty positive feelings about this one. The fifth case, though, the only reason it's not in the top tier is because the mastermind is just way too obvious. The mastermind's not even introduced in this case. It's actually in a prior case. But as soon as you meet that character, you already know that they're evil. Like they're just designed to look evil, and everything about them is intimidating. I think the series as a whole would have been better if that person was not a villain. Like, I mean, they could have played some role in like a hypothetical other mastermind's plan and like been a co-conspirator. Like, I guess that would have been okay, but I don't know. It really that really deflated my sales. Everything else, I mean, I like the conclusion to Naruhodo's story. I like the conclusion to Sherlock's story. I can't talk about any of the other characters because of spoilers, but they all have pretty good conclusions. It's just great. So absolutely great. Well, I feel like I've been talking for forever. I think overall my thoughts on the series are pretty positive. I'm surprised how positive I actually was because I'm a pretty negative person in real life, but I think you can see how much I love this series. Um, if I had to recommend only one game to get, I would probably get the Ace Attorney trilogy set because that's like one complete storyline through 3 separate games, and the pacing for the most part is pretty good. I mean, there's only like 4 cases that were bad, so I would recommend that. And then, I don't know. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'm sure I'll put some sort of addendum because I'm going to be listening to this later, and I bet I will notice some sort of mistake I made. Anyway, have a good day and Happy New Year.